Joey DeFeo, welcome to the Single Track Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. First podcast, so pretty cool.
Right on, and hopefully the first of many. It looks like you're going to have an interesting career in our sport, and I want to get into a lot of that. I know this is supposed to be a pre-race interview for Speedgoat, but you have a lot of fascinating things going on in your life, and maybe the first place we dive in is your background running at Northern Arizona University, which to anybody in the track and field, cross-country, road space, it's a really well-regarded program in the U.S. And I'm curious, what was that experience like? And talk about that.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience. I mean, always super awesome to have the honor to run at NAU. I mean, we won 4 national titles in the span of the whole time I think I was there. So 4 out of the 5 years, which was really awesome. I mean, couldn't have asked for a better program to run at. I mean, there was like some rocky areas and also some like awesome areas. I mean, obviously you go into a program like that. I think they had won a title before I got there. So, I mean, you're thrown to the wolves immediately. It's not going to be like a smooth transition where you get to just pick up where you were in high school. So I mean, that's what I wanted though, going to NAU, just get my butt kicked every day. So it was pretty awesome to watch or to run under Coach Smith as well. He's a super awesome person to be coached by, and just to watch other people around me develop, people who, I mean, they're awesome runners now as well. So it was definitely really cool to run for NAU.
What events were you specializing in?
So mainly, I mean, I didn't really run track as much. I was always getting injured, it turns out, from winter. So I never really had a full track season. So it was mainly cross country, but I would have probably done 5K and 10K.
Okay. Well, one thing I'm always interested about, especially with these programs that are situated in the mountains, so like NAU, what is it, Portland State or University of Portland, UC Boulder. When you're running at that program, like how do you avoid the allure of the trails? Like, were you like chomping at the bit when you graduated to get on trails? Or
I know what you're saying. Yeah, that's actually funny because I mean, I got to Flagstaff and I mean, I had no recollection of any or knowledge of anything regarding trail running or ultra running before college. I mean, my dad was getting into it a little bit, but it was more for like a hobby thing for him, just something he liked to do. And I used to like make fun of it and was like, I'm never running that far. Like that's stupid. Like I'm not doing that. So, I mean, the first maybe almost 2 years of college, I didn't like do any of that kind of stuff. And then I started to realize like, hey, I'm pretty good at like climbing, and like I wasn't the best at like track workouts and those kind of workouts compared to everybody else. But I mean, we would do like a hill climb once a season, and then long runs. I knew I was always able to hang with the top guys, even though they were the ones who would smoke me in a race. So that's when I started to realize like, hey, like this is a pretty cool thing. And then you start to hear about people like Jim Walmsley and Flagstaff and all those people. And even Coach Smith ran professional trails for a while as well too, for Patagonia. So he was an influence as well. And then you start getting in. I think I went on my first big trail run with Stephen Kirsch up around the San Francisco peaks here, I think maybe junior year. And I was just hooked after that. And it was hard to find the balance of, I still run for NAU, but I really want to do this stuff. So I didn't actually finish my full eligibility at NAU. I decided to pursue trail running a year earlier than I would have finished my eligibility, just because I wanted to get a jump start on that and have an extra year under me before it felt like I really need to start making a name for myself.
I was just going to say, I was scrolling through your Instagram, and it must have been a post you made in early 2021, but you said that, quote, you were taking a chance on yourself stepping into the ultra world. And it's interesting to me that you deliberately made that choice. Like there's probably a lot of folks in your position that would say, let's see what I can do post-collegiately on the roads and the track. But you're deliberately making that move into the trails. And a part of me wonders, like, as our sport gets more popular, how much more common that's going to be. But a question I have for you, I see that you're wearing a Coconino Cowboys t-shirt, which is awesome. I mean, that training group there's so much lore around that training group in our sport, especially in the last 3 to 4 years. Can you talk about the influence that people like Jim Walmsley and Kirsch and Sensman and Hayes and all those guys have had on you? Like, are you training with them pretty frequently?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I ran with, or I messaged Kirsch on Instagram, I think. I was like, hey, you want to run? Like, this was like 3 years ago probably. And he was welcoming and let a junior in college run with him. And then I think once he realized I was pretty serious about it, I was like, hey, if you guys don't mind, could I come hop in on some training runs with you guys and really get a feel for the whole ultra and trail scene? And they were super welcoming me in. And so I started running a lot with Steve and Jared and Eric and Tim and Jim as well sometimes. I think Jim started doing some different types of races.
Yeah.
So it was more like Steve, Jared, Eric, and Tim, but they were like super welcoming, and it definitely made what could have been a super difficult transition a lot easier. And yeah, I do still train with those guys a lot. I mean, I've been running with Steve a lot because he's training for more mountain races. I know Jared was training for Western States, so he wasn't doing as much mountain stuff as I've been doing this summer. But yeah, over the past 2 years, I've been running a lot with those guys, and they've really been a huge influence on me and on bringing me into their, not just running wise, but as well as like a friendship with those guys. So it's been a huge thing.
And
I'm very grateful
for that. It must
be
a great barometer too, because if you can hang with those guys on workouts and long runs, or even just be in that stratosphere, you can probably feel pretty confident knowing that whatever start line you're on, you're probably going to be in the mix, or at least you have the potential to be in the mix.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you go out, run up some of these mountains here, and you know, if you're able to hang with like Jared and Steve and those guys on a big climb, and I mean, Jared's the second fastest runner at Western States ever. So it's super confident knowing like, hey, I train with probably 4 of the best ultra runners in the US right now. And so, I mean, it's definitely a big confidence booster.
Have they imparted any ultra running wisdom on you in recent months or years that you've taken to heart and applied to your training and racing?
Probably. I think definitely to like not rush into things too quickly. And I think that's what I've tried to hold back on a little bit, because it would be easy to go shoot for all these super big races that maybe are too long right now for how young I am. I mean, I'm only 23. So, but they definitely, I mean, I was going to do Speedgoat last year, and they just Jared was like, oh, that's a pretty big race to do. And I think it might have been my like second ultra. And I think looking back on it, that was probably a smart idea. And so they've definitely been very helpful, and I've been comfortable enough to ask them all the questions I would need to ask them.
Well, you have already stepped into the fire competing at some of the most prominent races on the U.S. circuit. So you were at Black Canyon back in February. You were at Broken Arrow last month. And I think the question I want to ask you is, again, you mentioned on your Instagram after Broken Arrow that Speedgoat is where you apply the missing pieces from that race. And you had a pretty great finish there. I think you were top 10, 7th overall. So
yeah, 7th. Yeah.
What are you looking to recoup at Speedgoat? Like, what are you building upon?
I think, part of the reason I didn't finish Black Canyon because I got injured like probably 10 days before, and then the injury flared up pretty big on race day. And so that forced me to take 9 weeks off between Black Canyon and where I would want to build up for Broken Arrow. So, I mean, looking back on my training after Broken Arrow, I can probably piece together, it was probably 3 weeks that I could say I was decently happy with. I mean, 2 of those weeks were the most vert I've ever done in my life, but not the mileage I would be looking for. I mean, I've found the balance between big vert and big mileage has been difficult since leaving college, but I think, so like 3 weeks in there were weeks I would say like, okay, that's like good weeks, but but not the type of build up you would hope for before a race. So I think going into Speedgoat, I took an easy week after Broken Arrow, and then I was like, I wanted to hit 2 weeks like really hard. And because I know Broken Arrow, the problems with Broken Arrow were it was a 2-loop race. So the climbs on the second loop, I definitely didn't have the legs for. And I think I can chalk that up to just a short training block. So I've hit 2 pretty hard weeks. And I mean, the goals with those 2 weeks was to do big runs after already being exhausted to make sure my legs could climb when I'm exhausted. Because Broken Arrow was a big vert race, but Speedgoat seems to be a completely different monster. So yeah, and another huge thing was also figuring out this whole power hiking thing. I know it was pretty funny at Broken Arrow because I can climb really well, but I think when I get tired, like I can't power hike. It's just a walk. Like if I can't run, it's a walk. So I've definitely been, I haven't figured out power hiking whatsoever. Don't get me wrong, but I think I've done enough to the point where I'm not going to be walking if I'm tired. I think I can put together a decent power hike to not lose a bunch of time on people.
What is the ultimate draw for Speedgoat? Like, why are you inspired to run this race? What made you want to sign up? Talk about that.
I think just after Black Canyon, I figured maybe take a step back from the longer stuff, so to speak, and do some stuff that I think fits my comfort zone, which is climbing more. So I was like, what are 2 big races I could do climbing wise? Broken Arrow seemed like a good tune-up, and Speedgoat seemed like a good A race to hit. Seems like it's probably if not the most biggest mountain race in the US. So it seemed like a pretty obvious choice for me. And I know, talking about like wisdom from the Cowboys, they've told me like sign up for races that have big history and big racing. Like you go back in results and like good people have run these races, because that's how you're going to get your name out there. So,
and it's cool that
was the lore.
Yeah. And it's cool that like this year, for example, Speedgoat is a UTMB sponsored race. So in addition to experiencing the event, if you have aspirations, for example, to go over to Chamonix and you want like, I guess they're calling it like a ticket to OCC, which is like the 50K World Championship. There's that opportunity. What are your expectations heading into this race? Like training is going fairly well. You're building confidence in areas that might have been weak earlier in the year. Like, are you somebody that wants to be in the mix at the front? Like, how do you race this thing?
Yeah, I've got a lot of confidence after Broken Arrow. Even though it wasn't the day I would have asked for, I think that first loop of that race made me super confident that I think I can climb with pretty much anybody out there. So if I can put together the second half of a race, I really would like to be top 3, hope maybe win it on a perfect day, but definitely top 3. And I think the biggest thing for me is to stay patient in the beginning, because after Broken Arrow, that first 5 miles of that race, like I felt amazing, and I should have probably stayed a little more cautious and slower. So I think my strengths when I run smart will be the end of the race. So I'm hoping to be there at the end of the race, and hopefully I can push some climbs at the end to make people hurt.
Right on. Just a couple more questions for you. We were talking about it earlier in the podcast, and your situation really excites me because you're part of this new breed of trail runners, in my opinion, who as soon as their collegiate career ends, or in your case, even slightly before it in terms of eligibility, your default is to the trails instead of to the roads and the track. And I think that that's only going to become more popular. That's my prediction as our sport grows. So I'm curious, do you think at all about long-term goals in the sport and how long you want to be around and just how much you want to invest in your time here?
Yeah, I think about it a lot. And I know one of the big reasons for leaving NAU was like, I don't want to go to the trails just to go run some like 20Ks or 30Ks and that kind of stuff. Like if I'm going to the trails, I want to go and run these big long races. So I think Black Canyon was a little bit of a wake up call to maybe look at like, okay, take the summer, like run some shorter distance wise races, even though, I mean, Speedgoat's going to end up being 5+ hours, which isn't by all means short, but I definitely look at the future a lot. And I know my future is 50 miles and above. Cool. For sure. So, I mean, once the whole cycle comes around next year, I'll be back in a golden ticket race, not sure which one yet. And I'm, for the foreseeable future, the spring of each year, we'll be trying to get into Western States via a golden ticket for sure.
Right on. That's super. I mean, we cannot wait to follow your rise in the sport. I think it's super exciting. Last question I have for you. This is a little bit of an odd question, but we do, for context, we do like a pre-race predictions analysis episode. Yeah. And there's a guy that came on my radar, Ryan Raff, who I think is also an NAU guy.
Oh yeah.
Can you provide any info on the training he's doing for this race? And it looks like he signed up for Black Canyon too, so he's doing similar stuff.
Oh yeah. Ryan's a real good friend of mine for sure. He's another guy who can just grind out some long stuff. I mean, I know he's still running cross country for NAU in the fall, so I'm not sure. I think he's still following Smith's training this summer to what it seems like. I mean, I know what Smith's summer training is like, so it looks like it's pretty similar. I mean, he's throwing in some bigger vert days though too to get ready for Speedgoat, but he's definitely someone to watch out for sure. He can definitely climb really well, and he can definitely handle a lot of miles. So he's definitely someone to look out for sure.
Well, this is a super exciting time in the sport. I appreciate you adding to the mix of it all on the competition side of things. We're excited to watch you on race day. I'll make sure to link to all your social media in the show notes. Anything else you want to leave the audience with before we go?
I mean, thanks for having me. I'm really, really excited that you reached out, and it makes me feel like I'm definitely doing something right so far. So I appreciate you allowing me to come on, and I'm really excited to get out there.
Cool.
Thank you.